Welcome to a new week of Daily Thoughts, and each day this week we're going to be thinking around the area of our five senses: touch, taste, sight, smell and hearing. And today we begin with touch. When was the last time you touched someone or they touched you? That may seem a strange question, but in these days of lockdown and social distancing, many of you will be starved of touch. And apart from close family who may be living in your house, it may have been weeks since you received a hug from somebody, a handshake by a colleague, or perhaps a kiss on the cheek from a friend that you were meeting for coffee or for lunch. And touch is so important. It communicates love and affection and warmth and welcome and so much more. And when we come to the Gospels, we find that Jesus often touched those that he healed. Not always. He didn't have to touch people in order to heal them. We have healings where there was no touch involved, but often Jesus would lay his hands on the area of need of an individual and bring wholeness to their lives. One of the first miracles, the first healings that we read of in the Gospels is in Mark chapter 1. This is what we find. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. And what's so moving about that passage is not just the power of Jesus to heal the man, but the compassion of Jesus to reach out and touch him. He was a leper. He was a social outcast. He was unclean. His contemporaries of the day believed that his uncleanness could be transmitted to them if there was any contact. And so they stayed away, and he had to isolate himself away. But Jesus does the opposite. Jesus comes to this man and he reaches out his hand and he touches him. And Jesus transmits his wholeness to the man. Those of you who are old enough will remember a famous moment back in the late 1980s when Princess Diana visited some AIDS patients in a London hospital, and the newspapers were there, and the next day there was a photograph in all the papers showing Diana touching or shaking the hand of one of the patients, and she wasn't wearing any gloves. And this was shocking, but she was challenging by that one gesture the common belief of the day that you could get HIV or AIDS just through touch, and it was seen as a sign of her genuine compassion for people. And I imagine in Jesus' day, as the crowd watched Jesus reaching out his hand and touching this leper, that there would be the same shocked response. But of course, so much more wonderfully, he could do something that no royal lady would be able to do. He actually brought healing and wholeness to the person that he touched. Or take one more incident, Matthew chapter 20, two blind men sitting by a roadside begging. They hear that Jesus is passing by. They cry out to him for mercy. They're told by the crowd to be quiet. Jesus is not going to be interested in you. But they cry even louder. And Jesus comes over, and we read in Matthew 20, Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. Now, did you notice the reason that he touched them? He had compassion upon them. We may be devoid of human contact in our social distancing situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. There's not much room for human contact when we have to stand 2 meters apart from everybody that we meet. But I want you to take this picture of Jesus today that we find in the Gospel and imagine him drawing alongside you today. You may be sad, you may be ill, you may be fearful, you may be worried, you may be frightened. Whatever your situation is, whatever your need is, I want you to picture him by faith reaching out his hand and placing his loving touch on your life today. And please God, something of his healing and his wholeness may be transmitted to your life and soul today. Amen.